Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Women Empowerment Podcast. I'm your host, Courtney Gideon, and it is my absolute pleasure to introduce my wonderful guest today. Today, we are interviewing Dr. Lisa Kellett from DLK on Avenue. Dr. Lisa, thank you so much for being here today with us.
Thank you for having me.
I know you have a very busy schedule, so it's really wonderful that you're here, and we'll jump right in because we've got lots to discuss. So I really am so interested in people, and I find that where we grow up and how we grow up really shapes who we are. So I'm really interested to know where you grew up and who were some of the most influential people to you in your formative years.
Right. So I grew up in London, Ontario.
Okay, nice.
And I think that, like my father was a science teacher. I think that going through school, I always had amazing, wonderful teachers. I had teachers that really looked to understand me. I did not speak until I was 4.
Really?
Not talk until the age of 4. Yeah. So, it was interesting. I went to Montessori and they had called my mom because my mom said, she doesn't talk. And I said, what do you mean she doesn't talk? She doesn't talk. And so they called my mother about maybe 3 or 4 days in, and they said, we can confirm she doesn't talk, but she can read.
Wow.
So it
At
was an
4.
interesting thing. So for whatever reason, and I obviously can't remember, but I
Yes.
didn't talk for quite a while. And I just had, as I said, I had teachers who understood me and who encouraged me, and that is kind of is propagated my interest in science and medicine.
Yeah. So reading from the age of 4, that's like almost unheard of.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure I wasn't reading like, Tolstoy, but
Right.
I did start to read early.
Okay. So teachers in school seemed like a comfortable place for you.
It was great, and as I said, there was a lot of support, and I love school, so I
Yeah.
think that was the beginning of my interest in studying and continuing.
Yeah. Well, when we're young, we're sponges. And so, how do you think the environment that you grew up in helped you define health and medicine?
I think that I liked helping people. And it was a nice way to marry the two. Like if you really want, you can help people obviously globally in a global sense. But if you want, I always liked helping people on an individual level. And I think that, being a physician and having people really entrust their health to you, and often their stories and what they've been through. And I was always interested in their stories and learning as a patient, as not just about the disease for the patient, but also the person.
Yes.
And I think that is really, really important, especially in medicine.
Yeah, absolutely. I like what you said there, not just the disease, but the person.
Yeah.
Yeah. So your dad, you said, was a science teacher. Is
Yeah.
that right?
Yes.
Okay. So was he, always kind of talking to you about science or like, again, that sponges thing, right? Like I feel like that environment can affect who we are and how we
Yes.
grow up. So is that a
Yeah.
big influence for you?
Yeah, it was a big influence. I mean, he's this great guy. He's very laid back. Uh,
Okay.
and it was just it was comfortable being with him, and I always found it interesting. So it was as I said, a perfect fit of marrying my inclination to help people on an individual level and being able to, make a difference every day. And even today, after practicing medicine for over 30 years, when I'm with a patient, time stands still.
Hmm.
So I'm so like involved with that patient and so immersed in them as a person and in terms of what I can do to help them, that literally the clock stops for me. And it happens every time I see a patient. It's the oddest thing. It's almost like a little bit of the Twilight Zone, but really time does stop and you
Wow.
focus 100% on that patient and what you can do to help.
Wow. Talk about really being there with your patient.
Yeah, you have to really be present and to listen to what they're saying, but also a lot of the nonverbal cues.
Ah, yes, exactly. Right. So let's talk about that journey a little bit because becoming a doctor, that's not for the faint of heart. That's a lot of hard work. There's a lot of dedication. So can you tell me a little bit about the journey of between, that little girl at school who was reading at 4, right? To becoming, deciding you want to become a doctor. Let's talk about that journey a little.
Right. So I went to, I went to grade school and high school in London. And then after that I went to Western and applied to medicine. And I got in after a couple years. So I actually do not have an undergraduate degree,
Okay.
which I have four kids who are in their, late teens to mid 20s. And they always joke because they are all getting degrees, an undergraduate degree, and I don't have one. But so I was able to get in after a couple of years, which was fortunate.
Yeah.
And then I actually did internal medicine first. So my goal was to be an intensivist. I loved ICU medicine.
Oh, wow.
So I really enjoyed that. So I did internal medicine first, and then during my internal medicine years, there was a patient in the ICU that was quite sick, and they had a rash. And in general, dermatology is unfortunately very poorly taught in medical school. They only get usually 1 to 2 weeks of dermatology.
Oh,
So for such a significant part of medicine, the training is not sufficient, I think, to be able to help family physicians and other physicians to diagnose skin and disease.
yeah.
So we all thought it was this awful infection, and the dermatologist came in. I'll never forget her. She's this lovely dermatologist, Dr. Lynn Gunther, and she came in at the end of the bed and she said, "It's miliaria crystallina, and it'll be gone by tomorrow. Don't worry."
Oh,
And I thought, okay, that is the coolest thing to be able to morphologically diagnose disease. So I'm a very visual person. And so a lot of dermatology is something we call pattern recognition. So
okay.
for dermatologists, like, we look at, everyone else looks at something that's red and they say, call it a red rash. But for dermatologists, we usually know pretty much what it is by pattern recognition and morphologic diagnosis. Much like you would be driving up to a sign that is octagonal, has 8 sides, and it has the words STOP on it. You
Yeah.
know what that is? We know what it is. So we usually know very quickly what it is and what we can do to help the patient. And
Wow.
and so after 5 years, dermatology is quite an intensive training program. A lot of it is based on histopathology, which is looking at skin underneath the microscope, and we
Hmm.
do a lot of that during training. So it's a very intensive program, and it allows you to morphologically diagnose disease and be able to help people pretty quickly. So that is the beauty of dermatology. So that's why I switched from internal medicine into dermatology. And also the idea is that a lot of it is procedural. So you're able to, for skin cancer, you can excise skin cancers, you can do biopsies to get the actual diagnosis. So it's fun, it's interesting, it's challenging, and
Yeah.
at the end of the day, you can help a lot of people.
Absolutely. Yeah. And so from going into dermatology and doing all of that school and everything, then DLK came around. Like how did that evolve too?
So what happened is when I finished, there was the little aesthetic medicine when I finished dermatology. This is before neuromodulators, before fillers, before lasers, before all of that. However, lasers were just at the just starting to break into dermatology at
Okay.
that time, and it was really explosive because now we had lasers and technology that could treat skin disease. And so that was an exciting place to be because there were a whole bunch of companies working on prototypes of lasers and light-based devices.
Yes.
And it was just such an exciting area to be in because it was explosive. There was a group in Vancouver, the Crothers, and they were looking at a drug called Botox, and they discovered that it was actually helpful for expressive lines and wrinkles. So
Oh,
that
wow.
was explosive too. Like it was just such a great time to be in dermatology and to be at the forefront. And what I wanted to do is I wanted to open up a freestanding facility outside a hospital
Okay.
that would be able to provide technologies and to be able to treat skin disease as well as aesthetic concerns. And that's
Wow.
why I started DLK. But at the time, it was no one else was opening up a freestanding building to do all this with 15 treatment rooms. So
Wow.
it was exciting.
Oh my goodness. Wow. What an evolution, really. for you
For sure.
and the time. Like what a unique time really for all of us.
It was a fantastic time, and for patients to have now, so many options and treatment modalities. It's exciting.
Yeah. So speaking about options and what is available to people,
Mm.
as a dermatologist and with all your experience, what are the cornerstone pieces to skin health and proactive aging?
Right. So I think the most important thing when is for me is when I see a patient, I'm a dermatologist first, and I
Mhm.
look for signs of health and skin disease. So
Okay.
that is the first thing. And then as a woman who has been practicing medicine for their 30 years, I bristle at the term anti-aging
Okay.
because
Right.
it actually gives the impression that aging is a bad thing.
Mhm.
Aging is a normal process of being a human being. And
Yay.
if we are lucky enough, we will age.
Right. Right.
So the thing for me is to be able to listen to a patient and to be able to be with them on their journey and help them to age the way they want to age.
Yes.
Which is
Yes.
not to say you can't age or you don't want to age or aging is a bad thing, but how do you want to age? And some people say that's fine. I just want to age naturally. And
Mhm.
other people, say, you know what, I'd like to do something. I'd like to be a better, fresher version of myself, which is what most of my patients ask for.
Right. Well, thank you for giving permission to age
Yes.
because I feel like there's so much that we see that is just like you said, anti-aging, and it's just like, oh, how do we stop this? But you can't, right? So it is a privilege. I love how you put that
It
too.
is a privilege to age. Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, I like that. That's refreshing. Okay, so let's flip things just a little bit because let's talk Women Empowerment Awards. Um, and you guys are DLK is a sponsor for the awards this year. So first and foremost, thank you so much for that support. Really curious to know why was it important for you to sponsor this event?
I think it was important because when I started doing this, there was no one around to help me.
Yeah.
So it was still very much a male dominated profession when I first kind of opened the clinic.
Okay.
And so I just thought, there's a Tim McGraw song. It's called Humble and Kind. And it
Okay.
just refers to, it has a line in it. It says, when you get where you're going, don't forget to turn back around and help the people behind.
Oh, I love it.
So that's kind of the thing that I'd like to do is to see how I can help, others that come after.
Right. Yeah. No, that's beautiful. I love that. Gotta
Yeah.
love me some Tim McGraw too.
I love Tony Garage. And also, I think that, there are some people who have sponsored women empowerment for years.
Yeah.
So Suzanne Rogers and Sylvia Mantella, who are both the most lovely human beings and who take the time and they show their support.
Yeah.
And I'd like to support them as well.
Oh, that's amazing. Well, they've, really without them, this couldn't be possible. And the likes of you too. So again, thank you so much. I hope that you get to, experience the awards and it's always an amazing event. And you walk out of there, at least my experience, whoo, I'm proud to be on this team, this women empowerment, team. So it's amazing. I can't wait for you to come and experience it. So let's talk about inspiring women. Is there a woman or a couple women that inspire you? Or maybe someone who has acted as a mentor, someone influential on this journey of yours?
Right. I think the people that inspire me, I always say it's actually normal people who go about their day and do extraordinary things without the fanfare, without
Yeah.
people knowing. So, for example, in medicine, there are so many physicians, especially women physicians, who, there's a crisis in medicine now in healthcare. There's a lack of access to timely care
Yeah.
and a lack of access to primary care. And for example, our family doctors are just, they're drowning, they're overworked, they're burnt out, and they make so many personal sacrifices, whether it's time away from their children. They're working on weekends. It's really tough. So those are the people that inspire me, the people that you don't hear about every day, but
Mhm.
that really are doing extraordinary things to kind of boost, to hold up our healthcare system and to be able to provide care to patients.
Yeah, I know a few nurses actually. And I think to myself, oh my goodness, you get up and look what you do every single day,
Right. And
right?
they work like a 10-hour shift and then there's no one to come in. They're asked to work another 4 hours. It's a very, in some ways, it's a very selfless profession.
Yeah.
There's so many times when you skip lunch. There's so many things you do extra because you want to stay with a patient. Like you sleep at the bed. So if you're worried about a patient, you can, fall asleep on the chair at their bedside because you're worried you're going to make it through the night. And those are, some of the things that you do and you don't expect anything for it. And it's done very quietly. And those are the people that inspire me.
Well, being in the medical field and a woman in the medical field as well, like you're talking about that all these, sacrifices and things, and I'm sure there has been some sacrifices that you've made.
Mhm.
Um, is there any specific battles or challenges you feel that you have had to overcome?
I think when I have 4 children and when I was having my babies, there was no maternity leave. There's no mat leave. So I would bring the babies with me.
Oh,
I would nurse between patients.
oh my goodness.
And also when I went to meetings, I would still go to meetings. I would just bring the babies with me everywhere. And thank goodness for my male colleagues. So
Uh-huh.
when I first started this, it was mostly male plastic surgeons in this field and myself. And I have to tell you how amazingly supportive they were. So I would go to the meetings and obviously I'd have the baby and I'd have to kind of, go off and maybe like talk for a while or what have you. And they would each kind of, they would all hold the baby. I mean, most of them were fathers and they were great
Okay.
fathers. So they were used to babies.
Yeah.
So, I'd have to kind of maybe run to the loo or something and they'd hold the baby for me or say, can I hold the baby while you eat? Or, that they were very supportive,
Wow. That's so
incredibly
supportive.
supportive. And
That,
it was
yeah.
amazing. And some of them were young and some of them were in their mid-50s, mid-60s, and they were still, so they'd say, no, absolutely come to the meeting
Yeah.
and bring the baby and we'll work it all out.
Yeah. So yeah, that's a lot to balance.
The big balance.
Yeah. But having that support around you, it made it possible for you, basically.
It was great. And as I said, they were incredibly supportive.
Yeah. Wow.
Mhm.
Wow. Oh my gosh. That's a lot. I have one and I'm like barely surviving. So to have four, well, that's good for you. That's amazing.
Yeah.
I'm really interested about DLK on Avenue. This amazing, company that you're so passionate about, I can tell, and you built. Um, what can you tell us about your clinic, first of all? And also, what advice do you have for patients who start using effective skincare? Like people kind of maybe new to this world.
Right. I think that the first thing we start with always is when people come in, they have a consultation with the dermatologist. That is step one.
Okay.
So, and that is not only to, address their aesthetic concerns, but also, people need a proper assessment to, diagnose the presence of disease. Sometimes they don't know what they have, but they also might have concomitant, conditions that would affect what they do aesthetically. For example, if someone has a history of dermatitis or eczema,
Mhm.
that would affect the treatments that are prescribed or how those treatments are done.
Okay.
So, that's a good example. Then we talk about it's more comprehensive care. So we talk about using sun protection always, because I'm a dermatologist. Then we
Hmm.
talk about, effective medical grade skincare that can be used,
Okay.
morning and night at home. And then finally, we look at the technologies that can be used to help them, whether it's laser technology, radio frequency, skin tightening, brown spots, spider veins, wrinkles, rosacea, acne, it goes on and on. But
Yeah.
but the technologies that can be used to help them.
Okay. Okay. And so when someone comes in, you just do that first assessment, and then you've got all these options available based on the history of
Correct.
what they've.
Based on their diagnosis, based on what they want as well. and everyone's different. Some
Right.
people want to start with things that are very easy, like skincare. So we would go over that with them, and what actually is effective skincare. It's a myth that you have to use, 35 products every day. There are actually very few that you need to use. So a lot of the time it's streamlining their process. They'll bring their products in and we can streamline it for them.
Okay.
So that is sometimes people just are looking for that.
Right.
And then it really depends on the patient. So every program that we have is an individualized program that's specific for that particular patient, and not only their medical needs and their aesthetic needs from a from a clinical point of view, but also listening to them about how aggressive they want to be.
Mm-hmm.
So some people want to do everything, and other people are a little bit more cautious. And that's the nice thing about what we do, is it's not all or none.
Right.
So, there might be 16 different options that are good for patients. And I always tell patients, we'll talk about everything, but what I need you to do is to go home, to
Mm-hmm.
look in the mirror, and to figure out in your own head what bothers you the most,
Mm-hmm.
because no one is perfect. There
Right.
are lots of things we can all do, but patients are the happiest when they look at what their particular concern is, what bothers them the most, and they treat that first.
Okay. Yeah, that's a really good way to look at it. And then with all of these options that you have, what do you find is the most common? Like what would be the most common treatment that, you would be doing?
Right. So one of the most skin tightening right now is very
Okay.
common. The use of radio frequency and microneedling to improve skin
Mm,
texture, to improve fine lines. And then also the very judicious use of injectable filler that, I call it stealth filling. So at the end of the day, a patient should look like they did nothing.
right.
Okay, so
Yes.
that is when the procedure is done well, they just look fresh and rested, but they don't look overfilled, and everything is in proportion. And also, we can help with brown spots, spider veins, red spots, so we can do a lot to help the skin color as well.
Okay. And so when you were speaking earlier about some of the technologies, you were saying that, you got into this right in the beginning when, lasers were just starting and all that sort of stuff. I would imagine it's a lot more advanced today. And so what are some advanced technologies that people might not be aware of?
So I think that a lot of the skin tightening technologies people are not aware of. There are things like thermage, for example, that can help to tighten skin. And I always say it's between doing nothing and doing a facelift. It's somewhere in the middle.
Okay.
There are, technologies that we can use now that help with fine lines around the eyes, radio frequency microneedling. And in general, a lot of the technology now, the downtime is much less. So you
Mhm.
might be red for a day or so after, which is acceptable at the beginning. When we started doing this, 25 years ago, there was a lot of downtime with the lasers.
Yeah. Yeah.
Tell people they'd be bruised for a couple weeks. And now with the advent of newer technologies, better ways to cool the skin,
Mhm.
it's a lot easier for patients to do a treatment over a day or two. Like they can do it over on a Friday and be good for Monday, for example.
Okay. Wow.
So I think that's really new. I think that there are technologies for body contouring now, like M-Sculpt Neo is an example that can do fat and muscle. So muscle toning and fat reduction at the same time in the same session.
Wow.
So that's exciting as well. So,
Wow.
so a lot of these are, the radio frequency microneedling device with the minimal downtime is the Potenza. So there are many kind of devices that we can use. There's a great device for brown spots and rosacea called Etheria.
Okay.
And so, as I said, and the healing time, there's a lot of these, there's no downtime with these devices. So it's really nice to be able to offer patients treatments that are safe and efficacious.
Right. And I think the really neat thing about like what you're saying about like M-Face and some of these other lasers is that maybe people who are afraid of needles or uncomfortable with that might feel more comfortable with something like that.
Exactly. And at the end of the day, I always say to patients, I'm going to sit down, we'll have a nice conversation. We'll chat about, I'll diagnose you if you have any medical diagnoses. We'll chat about what bothers you. We'll chat about your aesthetic goals and what I can do to help you achieve them. And at the end of the day, if you have all that information and you go home and you decide to do nothing,
Mhm.
that is still a good decision.
Right. Right. Exactly. But at
Right.
least you've given them all the information to
Giving them
make
all
that
the
decision.
information, they can make an informed decision. So as long as you are making an informed decision, even if you decide to do nothing and you feel that's the right decision for you, that is a good outcome.
Yes, exactly. Well, and what I also think is pretty neat is that I was watching you speak on the Marilyn Dennis show about people who can sweat excessively and how something like Botox can help with something like that. So, is there more that we don't know about Botox? Like, can it be used in other ways to help people with other issues
Yeah, so
going on?
Botox, most people think about Botox only for wrinkles, but
Yeah.
Botox in fact has been used for strabismus, which is an eye condition.
Okay.
For many years, it's been used in cerebral palsy for children
Wow.
who have spasticity. And now it can be used for people who have excessive sweating. So whether they sweat on the armpits or the palms, the soles, it can be effectively used for that. So we're learning more and more about drugs that we have and other uses that don't seem conventional now, but will become more and more mainstream.
Right. Yeah, that's really neat. That some people wouldn't even know that that's, what you can do
Mhm.
with it. But so I know I mentioned earlier that I've got one child, but I actually have two step kids as well, and one is a 15-year-old girl. And walking into a place like, Sephora, for example, they've got all these different creams and all these skincare things and whatnot. And so I want to encourage her to, yes, make sure you take care of your skin, but I'm a little concerned sometimes about some of the active ingredients and whether it's age appropriate or whatnot. So, what do, I guess, moms of teen girls need to know about skincare and what's age appropriate and what's safe?
So the first thing is I would tell you, get off the internet, get off social media, and do not get your information from there.
Okay.
And I would, if they have a skin condition, see your local dermatologist, get a diagnosis, and ask the dermatologist what they need.
Okay.
And I can invariably tell you, speaking on behalf of my colleagues, that what we will tell you is not a lot. You do
Mm,
not need 12 different products for a 15-year-old girl. So you
right.
need to diagnose the skin correctly, and you don't need to spend a lot of money on products. And with the right dermatologist, they'll be able to make the diagnosis and come up with a management plan and suggest products that would be safe and
Yeah.
effective for a 15-year-old girl.
Good advice. Really good advice. Thank you. I think we'll do that. Yeah, you're right. Social media can kind of, guide them and that they need to do this or they need to buy that or whatnot. But
And
yeah,
there's a lot of misinformation. Like Google will give you a lot of misinformation about what a patient might need.
yeah, exactly. Well, speaking of what we need, in the spirit of health and wellness, being as busy as you are, being a mom of four, and your clinic and everything else, what do you do to keep yourself healthy?
I tried to slow down. I think one of the biggest things I did was to start half an hour later, start my day half an hour later.
Okay.
And it was one of the biggest things that actually what made a huge difference for me because we do the drop-offs of the kids and I would be like timing it so the drop-off was 8:30 and I'd start my first patient at 9.
Okay.
And it was a bit of a, with traffic, I live in a big urban center. It was like a little bit too tight. So now I start at 9:30, which means I drop the kids off. I get to the office. I go and get my latte,
Yes.
have my latte. I sit down. I look through some patient charts and some pathology reports, and I have time to kind of get ready for my day. And that, even though it's just a half an hour, made the biggest difference.
Absolutely. The way that you start your day, just the mindset that I think you would,
Yes.
right. Yeah.
And I try to work out, and the only time I can really work out is first thing in the morning when everyone's sleeping.
Okay.
Because as soon as I get up, my
Mom,
phone,
mom,
mom,
mom.
mom, mom. One of my children now is in Brighton. And so she's ahead. So her, she'll kind of be texting me first thing in the morning because it's already kind of later on the day there. So I have to kind of get up first thing in the morning and do my workout and do that.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I like those two, working out when you can in the morning, right before
Mhm.
everybody. And I really like that, starting work a little bit later, just to kind of almost give your nervous system time to just relax before you start your day.
Right. It's funny. It made the biggest difference. And I wish I had started it years earlier
Yeah.
because it really, you're absolutely right. It's a mindset.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. No, I can imagine. I know what traffic does to me, and just to kind of, dive into work, that would be tough.
Right. Yes.
Absolutely. Well, it is a journey. And so you learn these things as you go and whatnot. But I'm sure there's been some ups and downs for you. But when you look at where you are now, and like right here, right now, with your business and everything else that you've accomplished, what thoughts or feelings come to mind?
I I'm a bit of a perfectionist. I always look back whenever we had an event recently, and the first thing I thought out through the event was how can I make it better next time?
Okay.
So I'm like the worst kind of maybe type A person to kind of ask. Most people would be a little bit more easygoing. But I think that the biggest thing is to trust your gut.
Yeah.
I think that, even at the generation of women now are much more in tune with that than even my generation.
Okay.
So I think that that is an important thing to think about. Like if it doesn't feel good to you, don't do it. And the other thing is to be kind to people
Mhm.
and to always do the right thing and also never take shortcuts.
Mhm.
Never take shortcuts. So for example, if I'm doing something like I had to count one day, I've done 20,000 surgical removals of
Whoa.
lesions over the past. Yeah. Yeah,
Wow.
like a crazy number. I thought it was like 10,000. I actually calculated it's like more like 20,000. And the funny thing is like every time I do it, I do like, even if it looks completely simple, I do exactly the same thing all the time.
Okay.
If I take it off someone's back and they're never going to see it, I still make sure it's perfect. It's
Right.
always got to look perfect. So as I said, never take shortcuts, always take your time and be kind to people.
Mhm.
And also give people the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah, that's a good one.
That's what that, I try to, because you really never know what's going on in their head and what kind of struggles and what is going on with them. Most of the time, someone doesn't call you back or something. It's most of the time it's not, don't be offended. They might be busy or they have something going on with their kids or what have you. So always give people the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure you see people come to you and they're feeling probably a little bit vulnerable, right? So
Mhm.
sometimes people can act a little bit not themselves if they're feeling a little scared or nervous or vulnerable or whatnot. So
Right.
I like that, giving them the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah.
Yeah. And being kind. Yeah, those are all really good.
It's important.
Okay. Last question. And I ask everybody this because I find it really, really interesting. So we started the interview talking about, the young girl, right? The when you were younger. And so looking back where you are right now, if you were to give that little girl a piece of advice, what would it be?
Trust yourself
Yeah, I
for
like
sure.
that.
Like there's no question.
Yeah,
And also don't listen to the naysayers,
yeah.
right?
Well,
So
there's a few along the way, I'm sure.
right, like when you're doing something that's outside the box and you're sure you're doing the right thing, just kind of have some blinders on and just kind of go through your path, even if there's no one that has forged that path ahead. Just keep going through the path and cutting down the grass and just keep moving forward.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. That's really great advice. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for your time.
You.
And thank you for being here. And again, thank you so much for your support for the Women Empowerment Awards.
Well, thank you for doing it. You're helping a lot of women, so I think it's really important. So thank you.
Yeah, this is wonderful. So, Dr. Lisa Kellett from DLK on Avenue, pleasure to sit with you this afternoon, and I look forward to seeing you hopefully in September.
Thank you, and you.
Okay,
Bye.
bye.